Good morning. All right, come on, that was weak. Good morning, I said. That's a little better. Come on, wake up. I know it's the last session, long week, especially with Monday being a full day. I got tired earlier in the week. I don't know about you, but I'm ready to go home. So this is quite possibly the last session of the last MMS. They've been conspicuously silent about an MMS 2014. So let's knock this sucker out of the park, and then let's all head to the airport and get out of here. All right? All right? Okay. All right. Give me some feedback here. So we are going to talk about hierarchy simplification. I am Jarvis Davis. I am a principal consultant with CDW. And we are going to just head right into it. So, by way of agenda, let's talk about what this session is and what this session is not. Let's set expectations. That way, you can be happy and I can be happy. What the session is, is talking about high-level hierarchy design considerations. This is, at its heart, a case study of a client that I worked with, actually Config Manager 2012 Beta 2 was when I did the initial design of this. This is a session that I actually presented last year at MMS that has been updated with new things that have come out with like Source Pack 1 and everything. So this is a session that I have done before. So at its heart is the case study of the one client. I have pulled in examples from several other clients, more along the after Config Manager was released and then Source Pack 1 and whatnot, blah, blah. So this session has a lot of key scenario examples. I'll have examples of different design decisions that we made both at the case study client and then other situations that you might run into. One of the key things about this session is your thought process. What are you wanting to think through as you design your hierarchy? As you look at moving from 2007 to 2012 or just doing 2012 to begin with, what key design decisions do you need to think about? Thinking about your thought process. I do have live demos. This is a 200 level session. I have 4 live demos planned. Call it a bonus. Okay, you should not have a live demo during a 200 level session. So, with that said, what the session is not, it's not a deep dive. High level hierarchy design, not a deep dive. I'm not going to dig deeply into technology. This is also not the answer to all design scenarios. I will cover a lot of them. Will I cover every specific scenario in your company? Most likely not. But I'll give you the thought process to think through as you're going about your design. As I've said with my previous 2 sessions this week, if this is not what you are looking for, if that's not going to make you happy, there's a few other sessions right now. You'll make yourself a lot happier, you won't be frustrated, and you won't give me bad evals. Quite honestly, I would love for every one of you to walk out here and give me a 9 after this is over. You know, that's my goal, is to deliver a 9-level session. So, let's head on in. Let's talk about the company profile of my case study client. They were 15,000 clients. In the last year, they're actually up to about 20,000 now. They're actually a defense contractor. I cannot tell you the name as a result of that. They have more than 50 locations connected via MPLS, varying degrees of connectivity there. 5 business groups with multiple business units underneath each of those business groups. A lot of historic autonomy. Lots of autonomy. And so each of the business groups, each of the business units kind of operated separately for a lot of time. A lot of acquisitions led to that. There was new IT leadership that was implementing a shared services model across the entire organization. They said, you are going to operate as one company, and that's how we're going to do it. They had used, at least certain parts of the company had used every version of Config Manager since 1.2. That's a long history. They've been using it for a long, long time. What they've been doing depended on the location. Inventory and updates was throughout the organization. Software deployment and OSD at some locations. They had tried to do some of the standardization, but each of the business groups was able to kind of do whatever the heck they wanted to. So very little standardization around what they're doing at all the different locations. I came into this company to do a 2007 health check of their environment. I opened the console and immediately had visions of being on this stage talking about hierarchy simplification, because this is what I saw. Let that sink in. That's a Visio diagram created with SMS Map. SMS Map, one of its little things is it creates a object for every role in the hierarchy. So let's strip it down to just hierarchy things. That's just hierarchy. Each yellow dot is a primary site. That is a central, 23 child primaries. Look in the bottom right corner. That's a grandchild primary and 3 grandchild secondaries. Bottom right corner was the original central and child primary of a company that was acquired. Think this through. That is 25 locations where settings can be different. That's 25 SQL databases that need to be backed up. How many people think that every single one of those is having successful backups every week? Nobody. About half, actually. And as a matter of fact, when I ran the health check, the central primary had not had a successful backup in 18 months. Now, with that said, do you want someone that's not a config manager rock star managing settings that can affect your entire hierarchy? No. I've never seen a company that had 25 rock stars. You're lucky if you have 1, 2, or 3. This company actually did have a couple of them that they were managing. They did. Some of these areas were fantastically managed. Some looked like they were barely managed at all. Most of them were somewhere in between. So with that said, when you look at that design, can you necessarily say this is wrong? No. In a 2007 design, as unlikely as it may seem, it is possible that business or technical requirements could exist that would make that a valid design in Config Manager 2007. As unlikely as that may seem. Now, in this situation, it was not. They realized it was out of control. They realized it was unmanageable. They wanted to change it. They were taking the opportunity in their migration to 2012 to actually do that. Could they have simplified this a lot in 2007? Absolutely. They chose to wait to 2012, instead of redesigning everything from scratch. So with that said, think through this question about what they did to your current design. What I commonly hear when I go into a client, so I'm a consultant, I go into a lot of different client locations. What I commonly hear is, don't blame me for the mess you see. Somebody else did it. The guy that's no longer in this role designed this. The guy that's no longer at this company designed this. I didn't create this mess. I inherited this mess. I commonly hear that. A lot of times, at least some portion of the design it comes from business requirements. A lot of times, if it is an unmanageable situation, politics are involved in how the design came about. Who in here has complete trust of the other team? Your workstation, their server, who has complete trust of the team that you're not on? 1. Are you both teams? No. Okay, 1 out of the entire crowd actually trusts the team that he's not on. That's common. Workstation server team distrust. Major reason why in 2007 there were sometimes extra primaries as a result of that. Server team wants their own thing, workstation team wants their own thing, keep them all separate. You had to do that in 2007. So mergers are another thing that leads to that design. Like I said, out of that mess right there, a bunch of those were acquisitions, mergers. A bunch of that came from that. They just kind of rolled it into their current hierarchy. So let's talk about design principles. When I go into a client to do a config manager design, I apologize, I'm short, so when I step behind the monitor, you can't see me. So I'm trying to stay on the side. When I go into a client, I have 2 overarching design principles that rule every design that I make. They are, make it as simple as possible. Start with that. Then add complexity as it is necessary, but only when it's necessary. When it's necessary to meet a business or a technical requirement. That is where you want your design to come from, to start as simple as possible. So, on the technical requirement side, the ways that I can split that out is what are my available features of sites or roles? That will have an impact from a technical standpoint on how I do my design. From scalability, things of that nature. How many distribution points I need, or things like that. The supported client count for sites and roles kind of rolls into the same thing. WAN protection. I got these folks on the end of a T1 connection. That'll affect what I have to put there. Business requirements. Which config manager features do you want to put at which locations? Am I offering just inventory at some locations? Just inventory and updates? Am I putting operating system deployment out there? That has a big impact on how I have to design my hierarchy. Different client settings has an impact on how you design. Regulatory compliance could have an impact. All different things that you have to figure in that could have an impact that might make it more complex or might not. So, let's take a quick look at the technical requirements around design. Things that from a technical standpoint you have to think through when you're doing your config manager design. So, where you start is as simple as possible. What is the only single requirement for a config manager 2012 site? Answers on the screen. Single server, single site. That's the only requirement. You have a single primary site on a single server, all roles on one server. That's as simple as it gets. Smaller environments could totally get by with that. Absolutely. It's not for every environment, but that's where you start. You start with a single server, and then let's think through, okay, do I need to split off some roles? Do I need to split off a DP to another server, or split off a reporting point to another server, or split off SQL to another server? Those are things that would add complexity to my environment, but I have to think them through from that aspect. Do I potentially need more than one primary site? Which would mean I would need a central administration site. Don't start with that in mind. Start with simple, add complexity as it becomes necessary. So let's take a look at some of these. Some of your site design options. Central administration site, new to config manager 2012, not the same as a central primary site in 2007. Vastly, vastly different. Primary site, only one that's required. Secondary sites, DPs that can be either a server OS or a client OS, and then branch cache also kind of thrown in there, kind of the stepchild of this whole thing. But a critical piece in some instances. So let's talk about a central administration site. What is the purpose of it? If you haven't figured out, by the way, I'm going to go very fast through these slides. I have 53 slides in this deck, an hour and 15 minutes to get through them. So we're going to hammer through some of these pretty quick. The purpose of a central administration site is only used for administration and reporting. No clients are assigned to the CAS. Different from a central in 2007. You have no clients assigned to it. Prior to Service Pack 1, the CAS had to be the first server, first site installed in a hierarchy. That's no longer the case after Service Pack 1. You can one-time attach a primary to an existing, or you can spin up a CAS and attach an existing primary to it one time. You can't attach two primaries to a CAS, but you can attach one. So the argument for, I want to put up a CAS just in case, which was never a good argument, is completely gone away now, because I can always install it later and add it if that need comes up. Which brings the question of, when do I need a CAS? Well, when do I need more than one primary? That's the only reason for it. I got to attach two primaries. That's when I need the CAS. So it's either I need two primaries, or I actually left off the other one there because I don't like that argument. Offload reporting from the primary. I can do that a lot simpler by having a primary and just having another server that's handling the reporting role. A lot simpler on the hierarchy, a lot less administration, and gets the job done. So even though technically that last point is in the documentation, I don't like it. So from a use standpoint, I don't like it. So let's talk about a primary. When do you need more than one primary? Who in here has more than 100,000 clients? 2. All right? Congratulations. You automatically get a second primary. You automatically get a CAS. Have fun. Who in here has more than 10,000 Windows embedded? Really? Wow. I did not expect one hand. I got one hand back there. Who's got more than 50,000 max? 25,000? 10? One person. You're probably the same guy that was in my session yesterday. So you got to have a lot of money to have 50,000 max. But if you got more than 50,000 max, you need a second primary. Congratulations. You have harder time managing the stupid things, and you have a second primary. If you have more than 250 secondaries or distribution points, with that said, each secondary can have a bunch of distribution points attached to it. I believe the actual number, if you do the math, is a total of 5,000 DPs. If you have secondaries with DPs hanging off of them and your 250 DPs hanging off of your primary, you can have a truckload of locations. So if you got a lot of locations, you get a second primary. Congratulations. Politics, another reason why you might need a second primary. I would love to have a word of advice about how to get around politics. I don't. Don't like politicians. So politics, honestly, try to get along, try to work together, try to figure out a way to get around the politics to keep it simple. A lot of the whole politics junk is just infighting that if you try to make nice, you can get around it sometimes. But if you got somebody that's dead set with a political agenda, I'm sorry, you got an unnecessarily complex hierarchy as a result. I would love to have a better answer than that, but I don't. Regulation of content is another reason why you might have another primary. This is typically with international situations. All right, let's move to the next one. How about a secondary? Oh, I'm sorry, skipped a slide. In my customer's situation, my case study customer, there were 15,000 clients, did not expect significant growth. Therefore, they did not need a primary. Therefore, they did not need a CAS. Moral of the story is, let's keep it simple. And that's what they did. They have a single primary. So instead of 25, they have one primary. Secondary sites, quite honestly, are becoming less and less necessary. They had a lot of reasons for having them in 2007, significantly fewer reasons why you would need one now. Basic gist is, it is for the upward flow of client traffic. Because the distribution point, which is the next slide, because the distribution point can now schedule and throttle traffic coming down, which is the reason you'd have a lot of secondaries in 2007, because that can be handled at the DP level now, that's not a reason for a secondary anymore. The only reason for a secondary really is that upward flow of client traffic. I have no inside information on this, what I'm about to share. It would not surprise me, though, to see secondaries cease to exist at some point in the product lifecycle. They're adding more and more of that functionality into the DP level. I've never heard anyone at Microsoft say this, and they may cringe when they hear this recording. But it would not surprise me to see a secondary cease to exist because they become less and less necessary over the time. The last point there, the tiered content routing, also has become less of an issue. I almost took it out because of the new pull distribution point that we will get to later. That is kind of taking care of that functionality that they used to be required for a secondary site. Other management options, a distribution point, which can be any number of server or client operating systems. It can do scheduling and throttling, like I mentioned. Pixie and Multicast are server only. Matter of fact, Multicast is 2008 R2 and above only. So you have various options there. Branch cache, various operating systems and requirements there for if you're doing branch cache for content management. So we have our first demo of the morning, which is a very, very quick and dirty demo. So we're going to just take a look at scheduling and throttling. So here's my demo environment. Is that clear? Okay. And we're going to cruise down, look at our site configuration, servers and site system roles. I have, so this demo environment is all running on my laptop. I got 2 SSDs in the computer, 3 virtual machines currently running right now. My config manager, primary site server, everything is latest and greatest. So server 2012, config manager 2012, service pack 1, cumulative update, blah, blah, blah. Windows 8 is my client. And then, so my Windows 8 client here is also a distribution point. It's a client OS DP, which is a full DP, not a branch DP. I hated those little animals in 2007. Some people love them. I despise them. So a DP, open up properties. If you take a look at this guy, I've got a couple of tabs over here. My schedule tab, which I had never cleared out this thing after I ran through my demo last time, so it's already throttled. So what you see here is between these hours, Monday through Friday, between 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., this thing is scheduled to where it will only allow high priority traffic across to be distributed to this DP. So unless I mark the package as high priority, it ain't happening during the day. So I've already got this thing scheduled. On the throttling side, I got the rate limits. And on this one, I can pick limit transfer rate per hour between 6 and 6. You can take 25% of the available bandwidth. Scheduling, throttling, done. I've now helped control the bandwidth that is coming down to that DP. Okay, cool? All right? No need for secondary anymore on this thing. Okay, a Cloud DP. This is new to Service Pack 1. It runs in Azure or Azure or however you wish to say that. Different flavor of the month on how you pronounce that. It can handle, one of the purposes of it is to handle multiple locations at one time. So all of your little small locations, they can go out to the Cloud DP to get their content. I don't need to have a server at each of those locations or a client OS DP at those locations. They can just go out to Azure for that. The cost of this is based on 4 things. Actually 3 things. I took that out. That should be a 3. Web rolled instances. It does create a very small web rolled instance is the terminology for it in Azure. The amount of storage you have up there, so the total amount of all of your package data that you upload. You are not charged for the data that you upload to Azure. You're only charged for what is downloaded by your clients. With that in mind, branch cache has a huge impact on what your total cost is going to be. Because in this situation, picture a branch location that's got 25 clients on it. You got a 100 meg package to pop down to those 25 clients. Without branch cache, each of the 25 goes up, downloads 100 meg. I just have paid for 2,500 meg of download from Azure. With branch cache, one of them goes up, downloads 100 meg, and shares it. That has a dramatic impact on what my cost is for a branch DP from an Azure standpoint. Blog post here on TechNet has actually fleshes that out a lot more about what that looks like. So I would encourage you, if you're looking at a cloud DP, go there to get the better information, more full information on that. So a pull DP is also new to 2012. So in a situation where you have, let me see if I can use the pointer here. You have your primary site and a source distribution point. So this is one of your sites. Your pull DP down here has a better connection to this child site than it does back to your primary site, or perhaps it has no connection at all directly back to the primary. With a regular distribution point, the primary will distribute the content both to the source DP as well as to the pull DP going across that connection down through there. So it would actually come across this wire twice. In a pull DP scenario, I can set this as the parent DP in layman's terms, and the primary will distribute down to the source DP, and then the pull DP will grab it from here instead. So you have more of the deep content routing situation. This is stuff you used to have to have a primary site for. Now you have that option with a pull DP instead. So, SQL, standard or enterprise. A SQL enterprise is only needed on a CAS and if the hierarchy is more than 50,000 clients. Who's over 50,000? More than I expected, actually. 4, 5, 6, something like that. Okay. So if you have a central administration site and you're more than 50,000 clients, SQL Enterprise is needed only on the central. For a standalone primary, it can support 100,000 clients on SQL Standard, quite happily. One note: if you install SQL Standard first, you install Config Manager on top of that using the database. At install time, when it creates the database is partitioned as SQL Standard. That partition limits it to 50,000. Can you later upgrade SQL Standard to SQL Enterprise? Yes. Partition does not change. You're still limited to 50,000. So if you're going to be above 50, or you think you're going to be above 50, seriously consider doing Enterprise first. So just as a note, the company profile for my case study client, they were never even considering getting close to 50,000. No CAS necessary. They did SQL Standard. Now, SQL local or remote. For those of you that are above 50,000 clients, per the documentation, remote SQL is required. From a scalability standpoint, it is required. For the rest of you, it is not required. Some notes about SQL being remote versus local. It should be a server that's dedicated to Config Manager, not a shared SQL box. Sharing a database with other things, other databases other than Config Manager should not be on that database, server. If remote SQL, commonly when I see that, it is clustered and running as a service account. You'll need to manually set the SPNs for that. Just make sure you're aware of that if you have clustered SQL. The big key, and this is the one that we're fixing to have a demo on, is that the primary site server account must be in the local administrators group on the SQL server, on the remote SQL server. Not a problem, right? Okay, think this through. The computer account system is an administrator on the SQL box. If this is shared SQL in particular, this becomes problematic. Because while you may be the Config Manager admin, you are most likely not a DBA. Would your DBA have a fit if you had access to the other databases? They go through a lot of hoops to make sure you don't. It's trivial to run a command prompt as local system and get access to whatever local system has access to. With that in mind, let's show it. Okay, so I do not have remote. My SQL is local to my Config Manager server, but in order to demonstrate this, what I have done is I have made my Windows 8 client the computer account, an administrator on my Config Manager server. Note that only domain admins is a member of this also. So only that computer account domain admins has admin rights on this box. So let me switch over to my Windows 8 system. And we're going to log in as Workstation. Workstation has admin rights on this workstation, but not on my Config Manager server. And so first of all, here's the start screen. Would you trust someone with that start screen on your SQL server? Realistically, that's my son's start screen. He's 4. I wouldn't trust that. So let's just kind of do something real quick here. Windows X, run command prompt as admin. And let me kind of zoom in on this for you. And so I'm going to just do a quick, who am I? You see I'm demo lab / workstation. No admin rights. But I'm going to run psexec -I for interactive, -S for system, cmd.exe. Now I have another command prompt up. Let me minimize the other one and come over to this one. Who am I? I am nt authority / system. What kind of rights do I have here? Switch over to my demo folder, map SQL. runs a batch file, maps a drive. J, dir, hey, look, there's a HIPAA database. That's fun. What can I do with the HIPAA database? So let's run MMC, add remove snap-in, services, add another computer, CMO1. Okay. Oops. Hang on. All right. So there we are. So I am now looking at services on CMO1. I'm not an admin on CMO1. Remember, I'm logged in with somebody with that start screen. I have now opened up services on a SQL server that he should not have access to. Let me come down to the SQL service. Stop. Do I need to go any farther? Seriously. I'm not an admin on the SQL box. I just stopped the SQL service. That should not be. Your SQL DBA should be in hives at this point, telling you to take your freaky database somewhere else. But let's keep going with it. I am now going to go move HIPAA.temp. I just killed the HIPAA database. Should I have access to the HIPAA database? Nope. Can I kill it? Yep. So if you run into a situation where your company is saying all of our databases must reside on our super duper fancy, clustered, massively powerful system, what I want you to do is send them to my blog, which I think I have linked at the end. I have a blog post on this about how to do exactly what I just did. It's trivial to do what I just did. That is a problem for your SQL backdoor. Moving on. One of the key questions that you need to ask when you're designing your hierarchy is around the combination of the WAN speed, how many clients are at the location, and what feature set I want to offer at that location. That combination has a big impact on what type of system you need to put in place, what roles need to be there, etc. So that was the last technical requirement. Business requirements. How do your business requirements have an impact on your config manager design? The key question is, which features am I offering at which locations? This is a business decision. Am I just doing inventory, updates? Am I doing app installations? Am I offering operating system deployment? This has a big impact, and this is a business decision, not a technical decision. This is a decision that is, for most of us, handled at a level above us. Someone is saying, I need updates everywhere. I need apps everywhere. I need OSD everywhere. Or at locations of a certain size. Or at these 3 locations. Or blah, blah, blah. Various reasons why that would happen. But in particular, think about operating system deployment. That's kind of the 800-pound gorilla. If I'm doing OSD to location, I can do everything else. But, so in particular, what I commonly hear is, various scenarios that I've heard are, we're only going to do OSD at our headquarters. We're going to build them and ship them out. That's a common one. Another common one is these certain locations are where we do OSD. Or locations above a certain size is where we're going to do OSD. Sometimes I hear, we're going to do it everywhere. If there's a system there, if there's 3 systems in that office, I want a DP there so I can do in-place operating system deployment. All right. That's your business call. But that's a business decision, not a technical decision. It has impact on the technology you put in place, but at its heart, it's a business decision. So in my case study client, their key requirement was that if a site had more than 30 clients, they wanted to do operating system deployment. Also, if a location had historically had a server, even if they were less than 30 clients, they wanted to put a DP there. Okay? And so they had DPs at those locations. If they wanted to pixie boot that instead of sending a USB key, or CD or whatever, then it had to be a server OS, not a client OS, because the requirements around having a Pixie point doing that. Now, custom client settings. In 2007, custom client settings were one size fits all. They were at the primary level. So if you had a primary, your client settings were set at the primary level. There was no customization. It was all or nothing. This in particular, I have seen cause a situation at clients where they would pull in a separate primary for the server team, separate primary for the workstation team, simply around client settings. Because things like remote control, help desk need to be able to remote control workstations. Don't want them to have any ability to do that on a server. And so there's things like that that actually would cause extra hierarchy at some situations. So custom client settings are available in Config Manager 2012. You have the default settings that come up out of the box, and then you can set custom settings at the collection level. So I got these 5 systems I want custom settings on, or I got HR computers or executive computers or blah, blah, blah. I got custom settings I can deploy at the collection level to be very, very granular. With that said, I can simplify a lot in my hierarchy because custom settings are available and they don't need a separate primary to do so. So, demo time. First, I need to make sure that I restart the SQL service. And let's flip back over to my config manager server. And to make sure I don't forget anything, I've got a script of exactly what I want to do. So our example scenario here is I want special client settings for my HR department. For the vast majority of systems out in my environment, I want the help desk to be able to do remote control without the user being prompted. So the user's away from their desk, I can hit remote control, get in the system without any problem whatsoever. But HR, I don't know what they might have on their screen. They may have salaries up on their screen. They may have a termination thing on their screen. Help desk should not be allowed to see that. HR computers should be prompted before remote control is allowed. That's my custom client setting that we're going to put in place here. So let's take a look at our client settings. So in my default client settings, let me zoom in on this. Let me run zoom it first. So my custom client settings, when I go down to remote tools on custom client settings, it is enabled. And then what you'll see is prompt user for remote control is no. So for all of my machines, the default setting is just let them in. And so what I'm going to do here to show that is flip back over to Assets and Compliance, go to Devices, go to Windows 8 Client, right-click, start remote control, and I'm able to get in without being prompted. So now I'm going to disconnect from that. And come back over to my custom client settings, or my client settings. I'm going to right-click, create, let me zoom in again for you. Create custom client device settings. And we're going to call this one HR remote control. Scroll in here, remote tools. Click on remote tools, come back over. And we're going to say prompt user for remote control permission is yes on this guy. Hit OK. And then what I have to do now is I'm going to right-click this guy and deploy this custom client setting out to a collection. And so I've already got a HR computers collection that is already there. So I'm deploying that custom client setting to that system. So what I'm going to do now is give it a couple of seconds to bake. If you're not aware, Config Manager is a crock pot. It is not a microwave. You've got to let it bake sometimes. You can make it very mad if you try to speed it up. It gets angry sometimes. So now I'm going to kick machine policy. Hopefully I gave it enough time there. come back over to here, assets compliance, devices, Windows 8 client, and we're fixing to find out if I gave it enough time. Remote control. Asking the user to allow remote control. Now pop up here, and I see my lovely message. Approve. Let it go in. So, custom client settings. Dead simple. Very easy to deploy, and we're good to go. Cool? Cool? Okay. Well, I had to make sure you're awake. I know it's been a long week. Okay. Oh. Okay, administrative concerns. Who in here has a group of systems that you're not allowed to touch? Everybody. Everybody's got some system that certain groups have to control them, or executives have certain group, or some reason I'm not allowed to touch. My case study client, they're a defense contractor. Do you know what their reason for some systems not being allowed to be touched is? They had XP systems mixing explosive chemicals. Seriously? An XP system mixing explosives. You definitely don't want to patch that guy at the wrong time. Arizona ceases to exist in that instance. People could die if you touch that system at the wrong time. So, in this situation, commonly what we'll see is server and workstation segregation. In 2007, this was challenging at best. Could it be done? Yes. I know for a fact Wells Fargo did this. It was not without a lot of stuff going on behind the scenes, and a lot of very good process going on behind the scenes. But at best, it was challenging. With Config Manager 2012, role-based access control allows us to get this done very, very easily. Role-based access control is fantastically implemented in 2012. We're going to demo this in a moment. But basically what it allows is you have certain rights to both do and even see only on certain items in your environment. I have complete control of that. In my client's design, they had a lot of extraneous primary sites because of that need to segregate different organizations, and some of this was obviously political. All the acquisitions that came in, the company would come in, fine, I'll join your hierarchy, but I want only me to be able to touch my systems because I don't know you and I don't trust you. I think over time that became less, but that definitely was a lot of that. Some of those primary sites did exist for that reason. In 2012, instead of the primary sites doing this out for segregation purposes, most of the locations were only going to have a DP. Everything managed at the hierarchy level, most locations were a DP only. So, back to the demo machine. So, I have already hit the wrong one. There we go. I have already created various groups for this demo. So I have a workstations group and a servers group in AD. I've already added them as accounts inside Config Manager, and I already have collections created for both workstations and servers. So I've set some of this stuff up initially just for the sake of time today. And what we're going to do is take a quick look at role-based security. So let's flip down to administration, open up security, and so we have roles. So a role is, and let me zoom in there. A role is what you're allowed to do. So I am an app administrator. I can manage applications only. I am a remote control operator. I can do remote control only. This is what I'm allowed to do. Combine that with a scope, and the scope is to whom am I allowed to do this. So if I combine remote control with the workstation scope, I am only allowed to remote control workstations, not servers. So I have very good granularity around both what someone's allowed to do and to whom are they allowed to do it. That's your combination of roles and scopes. Collections also enter into that. So let's take a look we're going to add a couple of administrative users. So zoom in here. We're going to create add user group. And let's browse. And actually, it's my workstation admins group. So I'm adding these guys in. The roles that I want to give this guy is remote tools and application deployment. It's the only two things I want this guy to be able to do. Don't want him to manage endpoint. Don't want him to manage operating system deployment. None of that stuff. I want him to just be able to do app deployment and remote tools. Now, to what do I want to allow him to do that to? Well, I'm going to take out, the all systems. I'm going to leave all users and groups in. I'm going to take out the default security scope. I'm now going to add in collection, a device collection, and workstation clients. I'm also going to add a security scope that I've already created, which is workstations. So now he has app deployment and remote tools for all users, workstation clients, and the workstation scope. That's all he has access to. Okay. Now, let's do another one. Add group. Browse. Type correctly. Server admins. For this guy, we're going to do something a little bit different. He's going to be endpoint and operating system deployment only. And for a scope for him, we're going to take out all systems. He's a server guy. He doesn't need groups, and he doesn't need the default security scope. So we're going to limit him down some more. Security scope, we're going to add servers. And collection, going back over to device collections and servers. So now this guy can only do endpoint management, operating system deployment on the server scope and to server objects. He is limited as well. So let's flip over to our Windows 8 client. We are logged in as workstation. No longer have that command prompt open, so anything I run is going to be running as the workstation account, which is a member of the group that we just added. So I'm opening up the Config Manager console here. And what you'll see is he does see the user collections just like we expect him to. When it comes to device collections, he only sees workstations or something that is limited by the workstation collection. So all he sees is this. He does not see all of the all collections that we saw over there. So if I flip back over to my server system, assets compliance, device collections, there's a truckload more collections there. He can't see them. He can only see what we gave him access to. In this guy as well, software library, he sees apps. He doesn't see the endpoint node. He doesn't see operating system deployment node. He sees none of that, which is fantastic. I don't want him to even know they exist, quite honestly. You know, I'm sure he does if he does a little bit of reading, a little bit of research, but I don't want him to be able to do anything in them. He can't see it. He can't do anything with it. If I were to try to remote control, I would have a little bit of a problem because the only client I have in my environment is the one that I'm logged into, and you can't remote control yourself. So I've run into that before. But while we're here, let's switch user. So now we're going to log in as my server guy. Open up the Config Manager console here. And you see things a little bit different. On the device collection side, he only sees the servers collection, period. Sees nothing else. User collections, he sees nothing. Come down to software library section, he sees operating systems, just like you'd expect him to. Because updates and apps are tied to operating system deployment, he also could at least see that stuff. So that's the reason you see those nodes there, because that's part of operating system deployment. Assets compliance, you see the endpoint section here as well. So you have a lot of options there that you can see around that. Now, interestingly, one thing I wanted to kind of demonstrate for you, though, is let's take a look at the task sequences that he can see. He sees the server team only task sequence, because that one, from a security scope standpoint, is part of the server security scope. But there's another task sequence that he should have access to. So let me flip over here using my credentials, which does have full admin rights. And so I come into my task sequences, I see more, but I also see this guy here. If I go to security scopes on him, he's only in the default security scope, he's not in the server scope. So let me add the server scope to this guy, hit OK, flip back to my Win8 client, and hit F5. I didn't have to log out. This is real time. I added the scope, done. It appeared. So that is that's your role-based security. Very well implemented. Quite honestly, very easy to deploy. What I just did in 5 minutes here at the root level is the reason why some companies would have 2 primaries in 2007. That's huge. 5 minutes, I just separated servers from workstations. Fantastic. Okay. Now, we get into some fun part. This next section goes by really quick. So I got 19 minutes left on my timer up here. I think I'm on slide 30 out of 52. So, these next ones go quick. Real world examples. These are situations that we ran into at the clients. So, at the heart, this location, I said, had 50 plus locations. They had 7 locations that were Ethernet speed or above, so 100 to 300 meg collection. It had 7 of those. They had quite a few that were in the 45 meg DS3 range. The vast majority were in the 6 meg to T1 range. And then a couple that were kind of unknown, but they were DSL cable, so figure 6-ish maybe. But it was the asynchronous upload download. So, but basically it came through as unknown. So, for well-connected sites, so we had several sites that were connected by your Ethernet speed connection. So we got our main data center with 3,500 clients. Dallas, Denton, and Fort Worth were connected. Literally, their WAN speed was between 200 and 300 meg. Client counts at those guys were anywhere from 500 to 1,300. So, reasonably high on the client count side, but crazy fast WAN speed. And so, in this situation, we weren't really concerned about really anything, either the upload or the download of content. So what we did was we put a DP at each of the locations, so all 4. Actually had 2 DPs at the main data center, a distribution point in Dallas, Fort Worth, and Denton. And then we had a single boundary group that circled all 4. So all 5 of those DPs could be a failover between any of the other locations. So they could pull content from any of those. It was good failover for them, and it simplified their process. So that's your well-connected sites. Next example. We had some that had kind of a medium client count and a medium fast WAN connection. So 150 clients in Jackson connected via 6 meg link. Orlando had 500 over a DS3. So 45 meg with 500 systems, 150 with a 6 meg link. In this situation, we weren't really all that concerned about the upward flow because the ratio between client count and WAN speed was acceptable. So in this situation, we were not really concerned about the upward flow at all. Whatever the inventory data or a software update scan or all that kind of stuff, we weren't concerned about that upward flow at all. And so they did not justify a secondary site. And so all of these were distribution points as well. Next, small WAN compared to a medium to high client count. So 500 clients over a 6 meg link, 750 over 6 mega links, so reasonably high on the client count side, reasonably small on the client count side. So that was a fairly common scenario in their situation. We were a little bit concerned about that upward flow of client data, and so these actually did become secondary sites. The ratio between the number of clients and the speed of the WAN connection, we were concerned about that upward flow, so these actually became secondary sites in this scenario. Here's a new one. So this was actually one post Service Pack 1. This is not part of the original client design. You got a situation where you have a lot of small sites. I've got, I think, 7 up here. I'm talking more like 20 to 50, a bunch of small sites. They have a fairly small connection back to the data center via the MPLS coming up this way. So all of these connections here are T1 lines, but their connection to the internet is actually fairly a lot faster. So they get probably 6 meg or more up the internet. In this situation, what we would potentially do is, if you did not want a distribution point in each location, I don't want to have to manage a bunch of DPs at all these little 20 to 50, 100 small locations. I want to be able to manage one cloud DP instead. And so in this situation, and also if I got 50 T1 lines times 1.5 megabit, what's my connection back to my data center? Well, I've got 20. I can easily overwhelm that connection back to my data center with 50 to 100 T1 lines all coming in at the same time. So in this situation, I can offload that to Azure, have all that stuff come down directly from the internet instead. I got limitations there. I can't do operating system deployment with a cloud DP. I got other limitations there, but for basic client content control, works great. Another situation, so a lot of small sites with a different scenario. This one, instead of each location having that split tunnel from MPLS and internet, they all have to go back through the main data center to get to the internet. I've run into this at a lot of clients. Their internet filtering software is only their data center, so everything has to come across that T1 link to get out to the internet. Well, in this situation, a cloud DP, quite honestly, would be a disaster. It'd be just abysmally bad if you try to do that. And so in this situation, unfortunately, it is kind of ugly. You got to make a business choice at that point about how you want to handle it. It could mean you put a DP at every location. It could mean you provide a lower level of service to each of those locations. You got options, but that now becomes a business decision, not a technical decision. Okay? Network routing. This is the one I kind of addressed earlier. The St. Paul has a connection out to the main data center. Rogers does not. Rogers only has a connection to St. Paul. So in this situation, what we're going to have is a pull DP. So the main data center would throw everything down to St. Paul, and Rogers would pull it from the St. Paul line over that connection. St. Paul's got a fast connection up to the internet or up to the primary. Rogers has a reasonably good connection, but only to St. Paul. So that's your deep content routing situation. Special circumstances. This one was fun. So we have a situation where Tuscaloosa has a pretty small client count, only 50 clients over a T1 line. Just from what you've heard me say so far, what would you make that one? What's that? No. What type of system would you potentially put down here, based on what you see right now? Distribution point. I would think DP, depending on what they want to do. Branch cache, maybe. Again, coming back to that business scenario, what do you want to do? In this situation, they don't want to do like full application, full updates. They really needed content at the location. So normally you would think DP, until you find out it's a T1 link that's already saturated. That's problematic. Well, let's add one more thing to the equation. That's a call center with VoIP issues, because of a saturated T1 link. That's problematic. In this situation, they had very strong concerns about that upward flow client data creating more problems. The primary recommendation, fix the freaking bandwidth problem. You've already got a business problem. You've got a technical problem that's creating business issues. Your call center is having VoIP issues. Come on, with a T1 line, a T1 for VoIP. Give me a break. You want to do anything else there? So the two solutions are fix the bandwidth issue, make it a DP. Alternatively, if you can't fix that, make it a secondary site. I hate putting a secondary site with that few clients. I really, really do. But in this instance, it's actually justified. So I got another special situation. So the customer criteria was if there's more than 30 clients at a location, they get a local DP. Well, I got a situation where I've only got 17. They got a 100 meg connection. Why would you have 17 clients served by a 100 meg WAN link? Tell me. Nope. That'd be great, wouldn't it? Executives. You had executives at that location. So let's just say they had a vested interest in making these folks happy. They really wanted to make sure these folks are happy. It was kind of it could be a career-limiting move to not make them happy. Therefore, they got a DP with Pixie even. I think it was even a server-class DP with Pixie for 17 clients there. Want to make these folks very, very happy. So, looking back to our Config Manager 2007 hierarchy, you remember this mess here. We simplified this down to that in 2012. That's a single primary. That is 7 secondaries, bottom right corners, 33 distribution points. Dramatically simplified that hierarchy from, like I said, this mess here with 25 SQL databases, 25 locations where client settings could be different. Now we got a very manageable situation for 15,000 clients at 50 plus locations. So, what this means to you, when you're thinking this through, come back to our key design criteria. Make it as simple as possible. Don't add complexity just for the sake of complexity. Does a CAS look cool? Yep. Is it necessary? Probably not. Probably not. One of the worst things most companies could do is to just copy your 2007 hierarchy in 2012. One of the worst decisions you can make. If you're already just a single primary, fantastic, you are copying. But for a lot of you, it would potentially be a mistake to just copy a central and child primaries. Quite honestly, it might even be a mistake to copy a bunch of secondaries. Rethink every single one, thinking it through the grid of business requirements and technical requirements. You got to think through the business somewhat. And maybe, for some of you, that may be made at a decision above you. Okay? Bring folks in. What are we going to offer at each of these locations? Let's go ahead and have that conversation from a business standpoint, and then let that feed into my technical decisions about how I want to implement this. I come back to this. Plan, and then plan some more. At larger organizations, all you folks are like 50,000 clients. On my flight down here last Sunday, I sat next to a guy from a large healthcare organization that you would recognize, 130,000 clients. And we were talking about hierarchy design on the flight down here. And I mentioned planning, and it was just, well, of course you do that. 130,000 clients, you have to do that. Or else the whole project just fails. For some of you in the smaller environments, maybe you've been kind of flying by the seat of your pants on some of these things. Don't make that mistake. Plan this sucker out. Think it through from a design standpoint. So other resources here, some of the scalability stuff, I put a link up to the TechNet documentation there. The pricing for the Cloud DP, the shared SQL Server conversation verbalprocessor.com is my blog. And then several other sessions from MMS that you can go back and look at later online. And then shameless plug from my blog at the end, verbalprocessor.com. So, from an eval standpoint, if you enjoyed what you heard today, by all means, please fill out evals. I would love to see a bunch of 9s. And if you did not like what you did, please get on a flight home and don't ever look at the eval station again, please. If you have any questions, come to the mics. We got several minutes. We can do questions and kind of go from there. Anybody with a question? Head of the bike. Got one going.
So I'm really hoping you don't make me cry on this.
What's that?
I'm really hoping you don't make me cry on this. I don't want a CAS. I have 830 distribution points.
You have what?
830 distribution points.
Okay.
Do the secondary site servers, if I add those into my hierarchy, does that reset that count for me so I can have like,
you can have, if I'm not mistaken, you could have 250, I think it's 250 hanging off of every secondary as well.
That's what I wanted to hear.
You can do some of that, yeah. Yep. Very good question. Yeah, I don't want to make you cry. So, anybody else? All right. Anybody got more questions coming up to the front? And I'll be glad to answer them. So, thank you very much for your time. Last session of the last MMS. You guys have a safe flight home. Thanks.